Okay, here we go. It is another tough day, and I've got 2 videos now that I can upload to get me 2 days further ahead of myself, and then I'll do it again tomorrow. And then if I'm really good, I'll record something over the weekend, and I continue to propel myself forwards. I want to talk about the cost of advertising and the cost of marketing and my ability to get out into the world, or so to speak. I saw this sort of marketing tactic where people were able to put their advertisements in movie theaters, and that seemed like a legitimate way to try and get some traction locally through, or for some exposure. And I really quite enjoyed it and was hoping that I could leverage that as a way to grow an audience. And it's interesting to think about the numbers and everything. They were saying that in these smaller towns that have cinemas that they cover, they advertise about, on average, to 5,500 people a year. And I was like, that's kind of a crappy number. And it's $1,500 to get in front of 5,500 people. And I'm starting to think that, like, advertising and marketing is really the name of the game here. The amount of money that people spend to get in front of people and to be the center of attention is honestly kind of insane. For a yearly term at one of the bigger city cinemas, it's $15,000. So it's $1,500 for a year at a small town theater where I might see 5,500 people. And it's $15,000 for a year in a big time theater. I'm not sure how many people they would project that I would see at that point, but it's just insane. And I remember the billboard that I ran and how much it cost, and it was not at all a cheap costing venture. And that was like a 3-month thing that I did, and it was, let's see, probably about $2,500 at the end of it. And so advertising is most certainly where the money is. And people talk about and ask about how they get the money, how these TV shows and stuff get their money, and it's that advertising spot. People know what is being watched, and so they then attack the ad airways for those heavily watched shows so that people will be more exposed to their product and be more likely to buy them. And it's wild to me to think that so much money goes into this market. But I do remember looking up the cost of making a video game one time, and it costs an insane amount to make a game, but almost every time they spent the same amount of money just in advertising it. And that is wild. And like promoting ads on YouTube is not entirely cheap either. I think I spent close to $400 for the week-long ad that I ran on YouTube, and I got 3,000 30-second views and 36 subscribers, and it just does not seem worth the money. And it's unfortunate because I feel like I should be able to promote myself for a somewhat reasonable cost, but instead I'm just stuck here trying to do my darndest to make it in this world and to be able to be noticed. It is very hard to start out from zero and work your way up in this world. That's what I am learning, is very difficult to do that, because most people ain't got $1,500 to fork over to just be advertised in one little theater. And they're like, we have little TV screens that you can advertise on. They're really cheap. They're like $800. And it's like, that's, for starters, not cheap. And as a little TV screen that doesn't have any audio, so you just gotta catch people's attention and hope that they notice it and they're like, oh yeah, let's do that. And it's definitely where the money goes, where the money is. I was looking at TV shows and the insane amount of money that they were paying these actors for these TV shows. I've been watching Modern Family, and Ed O'Neill is getting paid $500,000 an episode, and it's like, that is insane. Most people won't even get that in a lifetime, and you're getting it in a single episode, like 300 episodes, and you are just insanely wealthy. And it's funny to me, these TV show people don't oftentimes get the kind of recognition that they deserve for, honestly, probably how wealthy they are. What started the whole conversation was seeing that I watch Pod Meets World, or I listen to Pod Meets World every now and again, and they have interesting conversations, and they were talking about how this lady was fighting for Topanga to make $15,000 an episode instead of the $7,000 that she was making. And then I looked up how many episodes it ran for, and she was making, if she stocked all of that away, but you think about it, they're kids. They have really nothing else to do with the money. If I was my child doing acting, I would stuff all their money into a high yield savings account, and they would be made for life. If I made $2 million, I'm confident I could live off of that forever. And these people were able to do that. And I've always thought that I would love to be able to act in a TV show. I would love to be a part of a TV show, and not for the money, just for the idea of it's like having a job, but your job is entertaining people, and how awesome is that? And I frequently now see these insane numbers that these people are getting, and wish that I had found a way to get into that, because it is just bonkers. And we lived in California for a while. I probably would have gone down that road if I stayed in California. I imagine that's the path that I would have tried to proceed. But like, not too many people are coming to the Midwest to film movies anymore. Or I shouldn't even say anymore, I'm not sure that they ever did. But I'm not in the right location for it. And I hate making excuses for myself as well. Like, that's unfair. But I really do wish that it was something that I had the ability to explore, because the money is just insane. And that's what people wonder, like, where does the money come from? And like, I wonder who pays who? Because back in the days of network television, if you have a show that you've recorded, you now need a network to put it on. And so I'm assuming that the advertisers pay the network, and the network pays the showrunners or whomever, and that is what determines your budget. And then from there, you hope that your show does well enough to get a good time slot so that it's still bringing in the audience and that advertisers are still enticed to advertise during the runtime of that show. I would assume that's how that works. Now, of course, there's also like cable fees to factor in as well. People pay money for their cable service, and so who does the network just eat all of that up, and they don't have to turn that back around into money that they give to these shows? And then, of course, where do streaming services come in? Streaming services have to pay people a certain amount of money, but like Netflix, I've never paid for Netflix, but I've also never had advertising on my Netflix account. So it's like, where is Netflix making their money? Is it completely and utterly in the money that they get from their subscription services? That's pretty good, because they're making enough money on their subscription services to be able to make their own TV shows, and their own TV shows that are mega popular, mega hits that the whole world loves, like Orange is the New Black, Stranger Things. These are all big shows that like took over the world in their respective times, and they were exclusives to Netflix. And I feel like there's some other Netflix exclusives out there that I'm forgetting about that were a big deal. And it's just interesting to me to see and to understand how this beast works. But the more and more I get into practical advertising, the more and more I realize that it is primarily made for those who are already wealthy. It is not made for those who are trying to break into the business and make a name for themselves and cut their teeth. I would be very interested in figuring out how much it would be to get a yearly thing to one of the more local Columbia theaters, because the ones that they were advertising me for are a little out of my way. I don't go to those theaters, and no one in those towns necessarily knows who the heck I am. And so I would really prefer the other ones, so probably have to dump this lady and figure out how to get on with the other one. And hopefully it's not insanely more. Honestly, the deal she was willing to give me for advertising in the theaters in question, I was thinking that was rather generous, but then she told me like you probably will average about 5,500 impressions, and it really makes me wonder if it is in fact worth it, because I don't know that that is worth. It's not even guaranteed like interest in the product. It's just impressions, and they're like, it'll show 3 times before the ad for 15 seconds, and you'll get a total of 30 seconds for this ad. That's all fine and dandy, but it's not what I was really hoping for. I was really wanting something that would give me some major traction and not cost an arm and a leg. Like I said, the cost was reasonable, and maybe the reach is reasonable as well. I don't know where my audience falls in small towns like that. There's a lot of people who are just in general fans of animation, and those people I'm sure exist everywhere, but they're probably not in these rural country towns. And so it's like I gotta know who I'm targeting in my audience demographic. And it's interesting too, because I feel like theaters in general are a dying art. And to be able to advertise into that market is difficult. And like, I'm advertising something that right now is just a sinkhole of cash. Like, I'm already dumping a lot of money into it. And then on top of that, I'm going to dump more money into advertising and getting it out there. And it takes money to make money, I get that, but boy howdy is it a rough go. And I wish that it were a little more friendly, but to the same end, and I say this all the time, if it were easy, everyone would be doing it. And that's what it comes down to. It is not easy. It costs a lot of money, and so not everyone can afford to do it. Not everyone is doing it. And I should be happy with the fact that I'm in a position in life where I could even consider doing it. Because there's so many people who dream of these things and couldn't even consider doing them because of the financial slog that we find ourselves in. So the hope here is that I can get a hold of somebody at one of my preferred theaters and figure out what it would cost to do a year in one of those theaters, and then get that buzz going and try and just get some people really interested in paying attention to the it'll come to me eventually, paying attention to the product. And like, at this point, I don't even need a lot of followers on the Patreon. I just need faces on the product. I need people watching the product who are going to give it a chance, who are going to give it the time of day. And hopefully I can do that. Hopefully I can get I'll follow an interested person to try their hand at making it and watching it. And the problem is you can't get people to, there's times and places for things. Like, to get people interested in the product is to try and do that in the middle of the theater. Like, no one's going to sit down and watch an episode of this animation in the middle of the theater. At least I feel like they would not be likely to do that, but maybe they would. Maybe what they see is so funny that they just can't wait to watch more of it. Or maybe I just get a bunch of people who see it, are interested, subscribe, and come back later to watch it. I don't really know. But I know that I am super thrilled and hopeful that whatever happens, and we start to grow in a more positive way. And that's really all I have, all I can say, all I can hope for. And hopefully other people have and say and do other things that I can find just as helpful and hopeful. And I don't really know what else to make of it, what else to do, except for make the plunge and hope that I'm advertising the right thing as well, because Compression Man tends to be, I feel like it's the better product. I tried advertising the books and I'm not really sure how well that got me. Like, people saw it and people pointed it out and they were like, ha ha ha, that's so neat. And I was like, yeah, but like, did you care at all? And they're like, no, not really. So we'll have to see what I can get out of what I've got. I left my car on. No need for that. Alright. Well, I thank you all for stopping by on this one. I'll catch you next time.